Tis I, Dr. Dementia, and Seaside version 2.0 Update Pack. First time we're going to talk about something that just released about a month ago in 2022. And right now, I'm using the machine behind me because I really need to solve this issue of why this koala wants to mindfuck me!
You will know pain.
Anyway, we're going to start by talking about the cards that were removed and then the new cards that were added to Seaside before we get into any more shenanigans. It's go time!
Get back!
So, of course, we'll start off with the removed cards. We have 8 in total this time. We have Ambassador, Embargo, Explorer, Ghost Ship, Navigator, Pull Diver, Pirate Ship, and Sea Hag. Now, with Ambassador, oddly enough, it wasn't the card's effect that caused issues. It was the fact that with the number of people you were playing, you were either having a good time or a shitty time. And the game supports multiplayer games, and Ambassador was just a way to shut down having multiple people have fun. That was essentially the reason why with that. Embargo required dedicated tokens to take advantage of its effect and trash an embargo itself. Now, you're only getting Embargo's effect once every time, and if they were gaining the cards other than buying, Embargo was pretty much useless at that point. Explorer, I talked about this. You need a province to gain a gold. Courtier does that better, and not for the cost it's worth. No, it's not great. Ghost Ship, it was the most hated card according to a poll on Reddit. I'll have that link to that poll. Basically, nobody wanted to play it. It made it unfun. So, that's the reason why. Navigator, scrying power, while great, if you play nothing else for actions, then yeah, but other than that, you gain a silver and that's about it, and you could potentially get rid of your upcoming hand for something better, but there was probably better options you could really work with. Pearl Diver's effect to bottom deck scry, while somewhat useful in some circumstances, it was really an inoffensive card in terms of just not having that viability, and that's it. You could get an extra card, that's about it. There's not much more synergy. Pirate Ship, it's either you get it and woohoo, you're gonna be awesome, or you don't and you either will have crap or your opponent will have something better, or both. The attack is not going to be successful every single time, and that's probably the main reason why with that one. And finally with Sea Hag again, like Saboteur, it's an attack that basically does nothing for you and goes for your opponent, and there could be a way around those curses. Not much more there than that.
Excellent.
And now on to the new cards for Seaside version 2.0. The first one we're going to talk about is Astrolabe. Astrolabe is a treasure duration, first card of that type specifically. Costs 3 to purchase. Now and at the start of your next turn, 1 coin and +1 buy. Now, this is a brand new card, so to speak, so there's not much in detail we can talk about. However, let's look at it this way. In exchange for 1 extra coin on a silver, you gain 1 coin and an extra buy. That could be potentially useful at the very start, and it works well with some other cards, but an extra buy is nothing to scoff at. I would say, in some circumstances where you want to pick up action cards a little bit more quickly, Astrolabe's a good choice to do it, but you don't want to overload your deck with this many. Now, that being said, because it is a treasure card, I will say, mine is actually a good card to go off of this, because it does cost exactly 3 like silver, and you gain it. So this is a good offset if you want to exchange a couple of silvers for a couple of these Astrolabes to gain essentially a silver between 2 turns, but also 2 extra buys. This is a great card for that specific setup. There's a lot of options, and since it is a treasure, you don't have to worry about any extra action cards. Having at least one of these is perfect, but this also means that the Astrolabe will stick around for your next turn, so no matter what else you get in your hand, having this coupled with some golds and some silvers, this could work really well. This is an early game card, especially if you can get them out quickly. Mix it up between a couple of silvers and a couple of these cards, and you should be set to have some fun. I will say, I am actually loving the style of this card being a treasure duration, and this is the first of its kind. And it's going to get a little bit more crazier than that, but this is a nice way to start off the set. The next new card we have is Blockade. Blockade costs 4 to purchase. It is an action, duration, and an attack card, and I'll go over that in a second. You gain a card costing up to 4, setting it aside. At the start of your next turn, you put it into your hand while it's set aside. When another player gains a copy of it on their turn, they gain a curse. This is an attack duration card, and this is definitely a more viable upgrade from Embargo. Now, basically, instead of trashing Embargo, you set Blockade aside, which means you can still use the same Blockade in future turns without having to lose it. Now, that being said, while this is fantastic, because it's basically anytime you gain it, regardless if it's a buy or not, the card does have to cost up to 4. Now, be that as it may, Bridge into Blockade is a good choice. If you are set up in a way where your opponent can definitely get a province on their next turn, I would say maximize as much into Bridge as possible to reduce the cost of a province, blockade province, by gaining it, and then they will have to think twice before going into it. Now, some viable possibilities besides that, but that is a lot of setup. But, like I said, when Embargo was basically restricting itself in terms of how you got the card, which in this case, for Embargo, was buying it, in Blockade's case, it's anytime you gain the card, you will basically have a much better way of generating curses for your opponent without having to force an Embargo token onto the field. This essentially gets rid of Embargo tokens altogether because of this effect. And I'd say, even though it costs 4, it's a lot better option to work with. Plus, it's not so as expensive to be able to use this duration card perfectly. Because then you immediately gain the card without having it go into your discard pile, which means you can use it effectively after Blockade's effect is done. It's good for early game, definitely good for mid game. Unless you can downsize the cost of some of the other cards, which, of course, besides Bridge, there are other options too. Not so much super late game, especially if they have a way to get rid of the curses. Still a very good card. I like this one. Next, we have another attack duration card called Corsair. Corsair costs 5 to purchase, plus 2 coin. At the start of your next turn, plus 1 card. Until then, each other player trashes the first silver or gold they play each turn. This is an upgrade to Pirate Ship. This is more disgusting than Pirate Ship, that I love it so much. First off, you get the coin that turn, so terminal silver right there, setting yourself up for something decent at least. Of course, not having any more plus actions, probably one of the last cards you're going to play this turn, keeping that in mind. You gain an extra card in your next turn, setting your hand up for a little bit more action or a little bit more treasure. And then the disgusting part is, each turn, whatever silver or gold they play has to go bye-bye. So if they have nothing but golds, especially off of treasure map, they lose 1 automatically, which makes this sucky. This is good for early game as well, but only on the 5-2 split if you can help it. Now, this is also a good counter to Outpost because of the fact they will have 2 turns, so if they have more than 1 silver or gold, they're losing multiple. But you can only take advantage of Corsair's effect once, even if you play multiple copies. I will mention with both Corsair and Blockade, because they are attack cards, Moat works to counteract that, and so does Lighthouse as well. Keep that in mind. Again, on a 5-2 split, if you can get it, get it. If not, definitely a mid-game card once you've saved up enough in terms of actions to be able to use it. And really, at that point, you want to make absolutely sure they have silvers and golds to really net the benefit from. I could see myself playing this card a lot once I get the physical copies from the update pack once it becomes available for me. Next one we have is Monkey. Monkey costs 3 to purchase. Until your next turn, when a player to your right gains a card, plus 1 card. At the start of your next turn, plus 1 card. Now, this is interesting because of its wording. Now, gain through Ironworks, gain through Workshop, gain through Lurker, any of those circumstances, even replace, even mind, upgrade, remodel, any of those cards means you get a plus 1 card for your next turn, in addition to getting a minimum of an extra card. This could set yourself up for potentially an overdraw deck where you're basically drawing into your deck, reshuffling, and drawing again. And this is good because this could work a little bit better than Tactician, though I could also potentially say this synergizes well with Tactician if you have the action power to take advantage of it. You need to make sure you have some actions, so Lighthouse and Fishing Village into Monkey and then into Tactician, giving you potentially a big hand with at least 2 buys. You're gonna walk away with some good money and with some good province as well. And depending on what other cards you can get, treasure maps work well with this as also because of the fact that you will probably draw into them very quickly. And this also surprisingly works with curse generators. So Witch, Sea Hag, even Embargo, even Corsair, they all work to benefit with Monkey's effect because they're gaining a curse. Doesn't matter how they do it, they're still gaining it. Which is why Replace is such a good card to go well with this. I should also mention, because of Corsair and Blockade being attack, duration, and action cards, 3 types, Courtier is a wonderful card to work with this. I should have mentioned that before, but Courtier works well with both of those. I'm saying Courtier works well with this too. It's an action duration. You get at least 2 types, but Courtier is going to have some love with this update pack. I'm going to tell you right now. 3 cost, early game, yes, because at most you could get, at the very least you could get plus 2 cards because they might gain something. Mid game is where it's going to start shining because they're probably going to gain more than 1 card per turn, especially if their cards are going to generate multiple buys. Definitely a good one too. Next we have the very first duration reaction card, Pirate. Pirate costs 5 to purchase. At the start of your next turn, you gain a treasure costing up to 6 to your hand. Now that's technically the action duration part. The reaction, when any player gains a treasure, you may play this immediately from your hand. Now, this is technically a much better update than Explorer, where you have to have a province in order to get any treasure. To get a gold, essentially. This gives you the ability to get any treasure. And yes, Astrolabe also works for this case as well, though, honestly, get golds first before you work on Astrolabe for the extra plus buy. Now, Pirate's reaction effect is whenever a treasure card is gained. So if they use Mine, if they use Replace, if they use Upgrade, they gain the treasure, that's when you can proc Pirate. And then immediately for your next turn, while losing 1 extra card in your hand, you are able to gain the gold immediately to your hand, thereby replacing it. Now, that reaction effect also saves you extra actions to have to not use on your next turn. So you definitely want to time Pirate right to where it lets you use it for its reaction more than its actual action effect. And it's a fun card. For 5, it's definitely a lot better than Explorer because you basically have free reign of any treasure card. And if, for whatever reason, you would want this, Harems is a good follow-up because of the fact that it costs 6. So yes, if you had too many golds, Astrolabe or even Harems are a good offset to go along with this for victory points or even for extra buys as well. Because of its cost, however, get it on a 5-2 split, because getting it when your opponent's getting a silver means you can get an early gold sooner than they can. Mid-game, yes, as well, especially if there are some other unique treasure cards. Like I said, Astrolabe, definitely a good target on this as well. Harem for some extra victory points, at least in that particular case, you are not losing out on unnecessary cards in your hand. I like this. it's definitely a much better improvement. These cards so far have been rocking it. Next up, we have another new and interesting duration card, Sailor. Sailor costing 4 to purchase, plus 1 action. Once this turn, when you gain a duration card, you may play it. Then at the start of your next turn, plus 2 coin, and you may trash a card from your hand. Now let's break this down a little bit because this does require going over every one of these details. First off, plus 1 action means that at least your hand's not dead. If you've got some draw power, setting yourself up to play anything else that's in your hand, especially more duration cards here. Second of all, once this turn, when you gain a duration card, you may play it. Now, I'll specify the rules have already been made now. If you play 2 Sailors, you can only use different duration cards with its effect, so keep it in mind. Now, this works with gaining, such as Workshop, Ironworks, any of those. You could use Sail automatically, so Lighthouse, Fishing Village, good setups for that as well. And then, of course, if you bought one during your buy phase, such as a Tactician, a Wharf, Haven, you can immediately play it, setting up your next hand. That just sets yourself up for some good stuff, because that offsets Tactician's negative downside. Because then you would discard from your hand immediately if you had at least 1 card left to use Tactician's effect along with Sailor. So, you want to make sure that you don't use any of your treasures, or you at least have 1 victory card for Tactician's effect to proc, and you basically will get a nice bonus. You will get 10 cards, 2 actions, 2 buys, and 2 coin to start off with. That added bonus of 2 coin just is icing on the cake, because then your duration cards just get a little bit more powerful as a result right then and there. Not only that, but then you have the option to trash a card in your hand, thereby thinning your deck out a little bit with some crap cards that you know you're not going to need. This works out well. This sets yourself up for a good warehouse setup, and basically you even salvager as well. All around, it's unrelated to a lot of these cards, and I mean it kind of took a hint from Ambassador per se, but it's more of a powerhouse, and it doesn't have that effect of basically giving your opponent any other cards. And it's a lot safer to use this over Ghost Ship as well. So, it basically is a jack of all trades kind of card when you look at it. Definitely late early game, mid game as well. And this really works out with basically any of the other duration cards that are available to you. Even Pirate, even Monkey, and even Astrolabe as well, since technically it is classified as a duration card. Now, that also, Astrolabe also works fantastically, because then it immediately gives you an extra buy to use on that same turn. So keep that in mind. That's also a good one to go off of as well. I'm loving all of these cards so far. This is fun. Next, we have a normal action card, surprisingly for this update. Sea Chart. Costing 3 to purchase, plus 1 card, plus 1 action. Reveal the top card of your deck. If you have a copy of it in play, put it into your hand. This is essentially an upgrade to Pearl Diver, basically for the main reason of, if you've been playing action cards, hey, there's another one in your deck. Let's put it into your hand, shall we? This is a scry that basically benefits from your hand and your deck size overall, because when you have multiple cards of the same, especially if it's like, oh, I don't know, Treasury actually synergizes quite well with this. Warehouse, any of them. But primarily, this is set up for the duration cards, because basically any of them work so well with this. You basically make your turn a little bit better, or in the case of some of these other cards, you make your next turn outstanding. And you have some flexibility with this. This is a better scryer than Pearl Diver, because you're basically looking at the top card of your deck rather than the bottom card of your deck, and you never know what you're going to come across. This is good when you've specified specific duration cards or action cards and stick with those and only those, because then you have a better chance of playing numerous Sea Charts and getting them all out at once. You are overdecking. You are basically playing through your deck, reshuffling, playing through your deck again. That's how Sea Chart is going to work. Early game, mid game as well. I could consider late game also if your deck size was small enough to put in quite a few number of Sea Charts, because you want to keep drawing into them. Yes, It is a +1 card, +1 action, but it's that secondary effect that takes off really well. Next on the list, we have Sea Witch. Sea Witch is another action duration attack card. +2 cards, each other player gains a curse at the start of your next turn. +2 cards, and then you discard 2 cards. Now, first off, Courtier, another good target for this card. I'm just going to say that right now. This is definitely better than Sea Hag, and this is an upgrade to a normal Witch because your other player is going to gain the curse. You're going to gain 2 cards. That's basically Witch right off the bat. But then you gain that added effect of 2 cards, then discarding down to 2 cards without having to play a second card that turn, which means you're 0 in card advantage because of that fact, making it a little bit better than Warehouse. But if you notice that you've been gaining curses too, this is a good way to mill those out of it. Potentially useful, giving you a chance to look at your fresh hand and say, I could do better, and then you get better, and then, hey, what do you know? That works out. 2-card seller, essentially, without having to spend an extra action to do it. Not a bad card, honestly. Eventually, the curse pot will run its course. That's to be expected when you're limited in curses, but you're still getting extra draw power. But that's it. You're not getting an extra buy or anything. That added effect of gaining a curse. Is it worth more or less than an extra buy, say, for a war? I mean, your hand could be better this turn, and it could be better next turn because of it. Don't get me wrong. But in this circumstance as well, this also shouldn't be the last card you play if you are very limited on actions. You should have another spare action or 2. However, Sailor's Effect, you can play right into it without any issues whatsoever. So that's actually a very good one to work with. I could see that. Mid-game. You don't really want to start this early game because you want to be able to maximize the amount of coppers you're going to have in your hand. And if you have all coppers, then discarding 2 of them, it's not going to be your best bet. Mid-game is where you have much better treasures, thereby reducing some hand flexibility there. So, not bad. Card for version 2.0 of Seaside, Tide Pools. Tide Pools cost 4 to purchase. The last duration card, +3 cards, +1 action. At the start of your next turn, discard 2 cards. Now, this is a very interesting card for a couple of reasons here. This basically created a ruling that if you have been playing multiple duration cards at once, you can play their effects at the beginning of your next turn in any order as you wish. So, for example, let's say you had 4 Tide Pools and a Wharf. You could discard all of your cards to the Tide Pools and then immediately draw the Wharf cards afterwards. So, the discard 2 cards may not be a bad thing, but all around, if you were playing this by itself, it's definitely a mirror image of traditional duration cards, where you gain the benefit this turn and then have to deal with the negative effect or the not so great effect the next turn. Now, again, this is good when you're stacking it with other duration cards as well. So, Tactician, Wharf, even another copy of Tide Pool. This is basically just milling out your deck for all the crap cards and getting what you need. This also sets yourself up for a over deck, where you would basically just draw into your deck, reshuffle, draw into your deck again. This kind of circumstance works well. Now, this is actually, in total between the 2 turns, this is actually a +1 in card advantage compared to Warehouse, which is -1 in card advantage. This is actually not bad when you think about it. You just need to plan ahead for your next turn to know what's coming up. But again, it's good to set this up with other duration cards, especially ones with the extra draw power, because then you at least will have, you can breathe a little bit better knowing that you won't have just a minimum hand size. The only card you do not want to set this up with is Outpost, because at that point, Outpost will immediately go into your second turn, draw down to 3 cards, then Tide Pool will proc, you will lose 2 of those 3 cards. You do not want to do this. This is better off in Tactician, this is better off with Wharf. Do not go with Outpost on this one. Mid-game card. Mid to late game. Early game, there's really no reason early on to discard the cards unless they were estates, but there's probably better options on the table for you rather than just use Tide Pools as a starter for that. And that is the last card of the update pack for Seaside version 2.0. With that, we will now get into the next expansion that came out, and it is actually a mini expansion. Alchemy. Alchemy introduced one new mechanic, which we will go into detail coming up, but it should be a fun one nonetheless. And with that, thank you very much for watching, guys. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Everything will help out, and we'll all support the koalas that are trying to possess you. Twitch, Twitter, yada, yada, yada. Go check it out. I keep updates. I may post pictures of when I'm in Ireland. You never know. And I'll see you guys next time. Adios!